All right, so the one thing that you need to look for when drawing or painting a portrait is identifying these three planes. Doing this will help you just make more sense of a portrait no matter what medium you're using. And in this video, I'm going to show you two examples where these planes are pretty obvious and clear, and then I'm going to show you one at the end where it's not very clear. All right, now before I jump in this video, I want to let you know that today, May 6th, 2024 is the first day of Paint Week, which relates to this video because in Paint Week, I'm going to be walking you through my favorite portrait painting exercise, which is painting a face comprised of flat planes. The first lesson went out today, which is on drawing and getting an accurate drawing for a portrait. And then in 2 days, on the 8th, I'm going to release the painting section where we're going to paint this. And then on the 11th, I'm going to do a live Q&A Zoom critique session. So if you want to sign up, it's not too late. And the link to do that is in the description of this video. So whenever you're drawing or painting a portrait, you really want to identify these three planes. And Andrew Loomis said it really good in his book, which I'm just going to paraphrase, which is that when painting or drawing a portrait, you want to make sure that it's not too slick and the face isn't too smooth and round. You want it to have a certain amount of blockiness because this is going to give it weight and structure. But also the opposite is true. You don't want it to be too blocky or else it's going to look too rigid, like it's carved out of stone, which is what you don't want. But in my experience, most students struggle to add this blockiness to their painting. Now, a good tool to help you with planes is this right here, which is an Asaro head plane. It's made by the great artist John Asaro. If you want to get this one or any of the other great heads he has on his site, I can't recommend these enough. I'll put a link to his site in the description of this video as well. But on this model, you can see three distinct planes. There's two side planes and a middle plane. Now, I specifically chose this portrait of Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator 2 to do for a Patreon tutorial because the way the lighting is with this blue light and then this other bright white light, it made these planes very clear and obvious. And I felt like this would be very helpful for my students to just be made aware of these planes so clearly. We have the blue light coming from the left side, identifying the left plane. We have this white light on the right side, identifying the right plane. And then the middle is just kind of normally lit. And I take note of these planes very early on in my process. I actually used the Loomis head method for drawing this in, and part of that method is drawing a ball and then slicing off the sides of that ball. What you're doing is you're creating those side planes. So even right from the drawing, I'm aware of those and I'm identifying those. I even went as far in my drawing as to use some thin white paint to identify that bright white plane being identified by the bright white light. I don't always do this. I kind of mainly did this just to show my students for the tutorial. But you can see how much it adds and how much it makes the form of the face more clear. So when it comes to adding color, I'm going through and I'm taking note of each plane with the correct color. And doing this is also going to help you find these smaller planes. Yes, there are more planes, and the color can help identify where the plane is facing. For example, on the side of the nose and the nostril here, it's blue, which is indicating to me that that plane is facing to the left towards the blue light. The exact same thing goes for the hair. I always say when you're painting hair, first think about the structure of the hair. Think of the hair as if it was carved out of stone. And if it's carved out of stone, it's going to have planes, and the planes that are facing the left, facing that blue light, are going to be blue. You can see even at this beginning stage with just flat color, so much form is already being communicated. And that is because these planes are reading. Doing this just gives me a solid base to develop the form more and get more specific with it. I call this working big to small, but also easy to hard. Get the easy things in first, the big easy things, and that will help you find the small hard things. I get a lot of students that ask me, like, how do you paint loose portraits that are expressive but still accurate? And this is a big reason how. It's because I start big. I start with big shapes and thinking big, and then I progressively get smaller and more specific. This allows me to stop developing the portrait once I feel like I've done what I wanted to do. All right, let's look at another example of this cowboy that I actually created using AI. This is not a real person. I used Midjourney to create this portrait photo, which was awesome and really fun to paint. And I did it for a Patreon tutorial. And once again, the three planes are very clear. On the left side, it's this warm light coming on the left, identifying any plane that is facing left. Now the middle plane is actually very dark. There's like no light coming, I guess, in front of him. So the mid plane is dark. The right side is a cooler light. You know, it's not super cool or blue like the Terminator one, but it's cooler than the left side. And once again, after I got my drawing, I blocked these out, starting with that middle plane. I go through and block that out with just flat color. And then I go to the left and then block out the warm side with flat color. And then the right side with that more whitish light. Now what's cool with this one is that with the nose, you can see these three planes happening again just within the nose. You know, the left plane of the nose is that warm light, the middle plane, the bridge of the nose is dark, and the right plane of the nose is more of that white light. So you can see that this idea of planes doesn't just apply to these three big major planes of the head. Like that's a great place to start, but you can kind of extrapolate that out into smaller forms like the nose. And again, like once you get those three big main planes in, or just like identify them and be aware of them, it's going to make everything else you put in on top of those or within those a lot easier to do. Now, those two examples, it was pretty obvious the plane changes just because the lighting setup. So let's take a look at an example where the lighting setup doesn't indicate these plane changes as clear and obvious. So here's a portrait photo of my best friend Ken, who's actually the creator of Standard Story YouTube channel. And you can see the plane on the right is pretty clear. You know, it's a lot more in shadow, but the plane on the left side of the face isn't really clear at all. I can't even really see it in the photo, but I'm not gonna let that stop me from putting it in. You can see in my final painting here on the left side, it's a small little strip and it's very subtle, but it is a shift. It's a shift in color and it's a shift in value. And because I have that there, it makes that side of the face read as a different plane, which communicates the form. If I didn't have that, it wouldn't work. And so you can see how not knowing about these planes and not practicing them and not, you know, like utilizing these planed heads and knowing to look for this stuff, if you were just looking at a photo like that one, you wouldn't see it and you wouldn't know to paint it. That's why it's so important to understand planes. Now again, if you want some good practice with planes and to paint this version of a planed head, you can during paint week, which is going on right now. That is if you're watching this on the day that I put this video out, which is Monday, May the 6th. But even if you're watching this later in the week, you can still sign up for paint week and catch up. And the link to do that is in the description of this video. All right, I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.